podcast, and I'm here with Cryptosforacause, or Pramod, who is one of the biggest, I consider one of the biggest and kindest shibes on the Reddit forums, who has done a number of different projects on Dogecoin, and one of those projects is about the microlending with Dogecoin, and we're going to talk about that, but a number of different activities. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit, Pramod. Why Dogecoin, and how did you get into Dogecoin?
Okay, that's one of the questions which I keep getting a lot. I got into Dogecoin because about a year back, I think sometime 1 or 2 weeks after it started, I just
Okay.
ran into the community and I saw that it was just crazy. People doing random things, making absolutely random posts, and it was just an aura of fun which was going around. Nobody was serious about it. Nobody even thought that this could be a competitor to Bitcoin or Litecoin,
Mm-hmm.
and it just looked like people were there to have fun and be nice to each other. And that's something I had never seen in the crypto community before this. So I said, okay,
Okay.
let's do something here because it looks fun.
All right. And had you dabbled into cryptocurrencies or any digital monies prior to Dogecoin?
Very little. I was looking to invest in Bitcoin, but there were a lot of problems there because I couldn't buy it directly. I'm sitting in India, and you don't
Mm-hmm.
get a lot of providers which accept Indian addresses as address proof.
Okay.
So,
Is that
yeah.
because of the existing platforms are not open into India, or is it because the ecosystem is just not developed?
It's both. It's much more the former than the latter because if
Mm-hmm.
you go to many of these payment processing websites, apart from PayPal,
Okay.
they, unless they already have a presence in India, they don't try accepting new addresses. So now, since PayPal is there, I can buy from a lot of places, like including we sell Doge.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the older system where you had to sign up at an exchange and then get one of their special wallets. Many of those didn't work here.
Really?
So it was much more difficult back then. Now it's of course becoming a lot easier, probably because of so many different people opening up so many different services around the world.
Uh-huh. So let's talk about that because that's one of the biggest
Mhm.
draws to cryptocurrencies, to digital monies, is that if all you have to do is have an internet connection, it could be rinky
Yeah.
dinky dial up, a mobile
Yeah.
device. As long as you can connect to the internet, you should be capable of using, cryptocurrencies. But there
Yep.
seems to be like this gap of access to cryptocurrencies. Being in
Yeah.
India, I mean, I see all these different forums about remittances and people going to
Mhm.
these different countries and trying to help out. What do you see is the biggest hurdle or the biggest gap?
Hmm. I'd say that today the
Hmm.
biggest gap is actually getting the cryptocurrency.
Okay.
It's not the tech divide. It's not about, I don't know, the volatility or anything. Those are problems later. But right now
Uh-huh.
it's a very simple problem of getting your hands on the currency.
Okay.
This is why I think services like Visa Doge are very important because they made the process a lot simpler. All you have to do is go pay using PayPal and you get them into your address. And we're trying to set up similar things in India as well because it's just so hard to get it, and there aren't exchanges for Dogecoin in India yet. So there are a lot of barriers, but the most basic barrier is that you don't have a place from where you can buy it easily.
Okay. And I do know there are some India Bitcoin groups, and they're trying to develop an
Yeah.
ecosystem. Are you familiar with them, or have you kind of
Yeah,
watched
I
it?
am. I've spoken to some of them, also spoken to some of the lawyers in this space because we were planning something similar and I had to get in touch with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bit silly because a lot of them go into this, oh, Bitcoin is awesome, everything else sucks. And that's not a helpful attitude. It's a silly attitude.
It is a very silly attitude. It's a consistent attitude in Bitcoin, and it's this weird elitism where
Yeah.
I don't know if you have this cultural issue in India, but here in America, you have this cultural issue where if you don't have a college degree, to a number of people, you're considered stupid. Um, I've
Ah,
been
okay.
I've been to a number of different places where I've actually seen parents, and they will point out to a fast food worker or a garbage man and say, if you
Oh,
don't go to college, this is how you're going to end up. And it's
yeah, I keep
very
reading about that. It's sad. I don't know why people would say that about other people. It's just not a nice thing to say, honestly.
it's not a very nice thing to say. It's very disheartening, but also the fact it's extremely disrespectful because a number of
Yeah.
these positions, whether they're menial or you don't consider them to be an advancement, are necessary.
Mhm.
Someone has to perform these tasks or it's not going to get done. I saw an individual speak on the subject saying that a doctor is incapable of performing surgery if the plumber doesn't do his job right, because you have to clean your hands.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
and it seems to be that kind of attitude in Bitcoin where you have people that are extremely tech savvy and they
Hmm.
just give you a bunch of links and saying it's that easy. And it's not
Yeah.
that easy. I mean, I thought of myself as being tech savvy until I
Hmm.
got into cryptocurrency. And I
Hmm.
realized there's a lot of things I was completely unaware of.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it seems that no one on that end and the Bitcoin end is willing to guide people, and that's why I love Dogecoin. Is that I can ask
Yeah.
what can be considered a very stupid question, like what an app
Yeah.
directory is. I had no idea that was
Exactly.
on my
Yeah.
computer. I had no idea. I was like, I thought I knew a lot about drives and computers. I even had, with some help, installed a drive before. There's certain
Uh-huh.
things I know I can capable of doing. There's some things I
Yeah.
know, like I understand it, but I won't do it. But like,
Yeah.
it's like, what is this app directory? What is, these things? And someone, that's what I loved about the Dogecoin community is that someone was willing to explain, show, show me videos, walk me through it, and said, if you have
Hmm.
any more questions, I'm available.
Yeah, that's exactly why I love the community too. Everyone's willing to help each other out.
And it didn't just stop like in the beginning. It's been consistent throughout the year. I mean, more people come in
Yeah.
and out. They dip, they go away for a few months, they come back. They want to know what's going on, what's this, what's that. And people are there
Hmm.
willing to answer those questions or guide them to the correct person and the correct information. And it doesn't seem to be the
Yeah.
case in Bitcoin, especially if they want to be this big mass appeal.
Yeah. Around a year back, I was at this conference where I had a workshop, and I
Mhm.
was just talking to another person there who was conducting a workshop on cryptocurrencies.
Mhm.
And I go to him and I say, hey, this is cool what you're doing, and you've probably heard of Dogecoin. And we just recently sent one of our Indian Olympian athletes to the Sochi Olympics. Don't you think that's cool? And he says, no, what are you talking about? Dogecoin is a joke. It doesn't even exist. I'm like, dude, the evidence is in front of you. You can see what just happened. But they refuse to admit it. They refuse to even look at it.
Yeah, and it's very disheartening because when I talk about it, and I've talked to a number of people, it seems that Dogecoin is one, if not the only one, but it's one of the few coins where people actually use it for its purpose of digital money. It's not a
Yeah.
sordid battle. It is not this cat and mouse game like Darkcoin is with regulations and government. It's not like
Yeah.
this token system. It's people are using it just like they use cash. They're spending it,
Yeah.
and it has a utility.
Yeah.
It has a function.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah,
also is
whatever you
this.
described, whatever you just described, that's exactly what we wanted to achieve using the microlending campaign.
And I wanted to talk
Treat
to you about
Dogecoin as a
that.
currency. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So there's a lot of misconceptions about microlending, and I want you to kind of break it down because there's when
Sure.
people hear that they hear because there's been basically bad actors that have used microlending,
Yeah.
they've built up the system, and they've either absconded money, people that actually didn't get the money. There's these high
Yeah.
fee barriers. And I just want you to
Hmm.
kind of break down what exactly microlending is, because for some people, they don't understand how $25 can actually mean something to somebody,
Yeah.
or even a
Okay.
hundred dollars.
Yeah. It's funny. Okay, I'll take a shot at it, and of course, with the disclaimer that I'm not an authority on it either. I've done
No,
a
I
little bit
understand
of
that.
research. Yeah. How it essentially works is, let's say that you get in touch with somebody who's in a village in India,
Mhm.
and they want to buy 5 goats, because 5 goats means they can start selling the milk, they can start making dairy products, maybe they could eventually sell the goats for mutton. So you're talking about 5 goats which could make a very big impact in their lives. And the cost of these 5 goats could be, let's say, 10,000 rupees, which is about $150.
Mhm.
And what these people now do is, if they go to a bank, they can't really get a loan because they have nothing to show. You can't just go to a bank and say, "I want money, give me money." They expect some kind of proof or something that you can mortgage,
Yes.
which is not an option for poor people.
No.
So they end up going to these local money lenders who charge them something like 100% interest rate per month, which is just crazy.
Yes,
And
and we
this
have
leads
this
to,
issue here in America as well. So
yeah,
yeah.
that's terrible. It just leads to this huge cycle where people can never get out of poverty.
No.
And this is what microfinance tries to solve. There have been some successful cases, there have been some failed cases also. So how microfinance works is you take the money from a bunch of people, or maybe from one really rich person, and you give it to these people who you think have a chance of using it for good entrepreneurial ventures, whether it's buying goats or planting a new set of crops or maybe investing in a new skill development. And what typically happens is you give them some money. It could be $25, could be 100, could be 500. It depends on how big the need is or how many people are borrowing. And after that, they try to repay it over a given period of time. Now, even if you go through proper microlending initiatives, the interest rate is much higher than what you'd get at a bank. But that's
Yes.
because they're trying to balance out, there are going to be people who don't pay you back. And every bank calculates this into the interest rate. That's why if you even, you'd be familiar with this in the US as well, where if you're a poorer person, the chances are you'll get a higher interest rate than somebody who's very rich.
Yes.
So this is the same thing which even goes down to microlending. It's because these people have nothing to show for it. Their risk rating is much higher, so they end up getting slightly higher interest rates. So it's pretty typical to see interest rates of around 17 to 23% on the loans, which is still much lower than what these money lenders charge. So you give this and you hope that they return it in a certain period, like 6 months or 1 year. And that is the basic system. There have been many similar initiatives for a long time. I'd say the most popular among these was the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh by
Yes.
Muhammad Yunus, and he's the one who also won the Nobel Prize for it eventually. So
Yes,
there have been a
I've
lot of
heard
very
of
good
them.
institutions doing it. Yeah, yeah. In fact, I'm hoping to meet him next month at one of the conferences I'm attending. So we should hope that something comes out of it, because we were planning to work with the Grameen Creative Lab to expand on the microlending project. But anyway, getting back to microlending itself, the idea is just to give a little bit of money, not that much, and you get it back, and then you lend it again to somebody else. So this creates a cycle where people are able to get started on very, very small businesses. They open a small shop or they set up a tiny farm. So you're giving them some freedom, some independence to their income. And that is the basic system.
And now, how would your project, because I have read the paper, but if you want to
Yeah.
explain to the audience your proposal
Yeah,
that you
sure.
had, how would Dogecoin kind of solve some of the pratfalls associated with
Yeah.
microlending?
Okay, so I need to give a bit of background for this as well. Now,
Okay.
what we're planning to do with the project is we can't actually verify that if somebody comes to us with a request for $100, we can't verify that they'll use it well. So what we do is we go through recognized platforms, and we've shortlisted two or three for them. One we're considering is something called Kiva, which I think you would have heard of.
Yes.
Yeah, Kiva is worldwide, and what Kiva does is you give them $25 and then they distribute it further. Now the problem is if you want to donate to Kiva, the minimum is $25. There's also another group called Milap in India which does good work, and for them the minimum is $50. And very often people do not have $25. They have $10 and they want to give it to someone. And if you just have $10, you're not going to be able to give it to anyone because nobody accepts $10. PayPal will charge you fees of some 20% or whatever if you try to transfer it. So what all these bigger microlending initiatives do is they have a deal with the payment processors. They say we'll assure you a minimum amount, and so you don't charge us fees, which is why Kiva has $25, Milap has $50. And what Dogecoin could potentially do is allow micro donations. Instead of giving $25, you give $2 or $1 or 10 cents. And this is a huge difference because if you look at stats, it shows that people who are lower income groups, they tend to give more. If you
Yes,
take it as a
and
percentage of their income, yeah, they're just more generous, they donate more, they're more charitable.
they donate more of their time, more of their
Yeah,
expendable capital, because they know how much or how important it means to receive, and so therefore they give.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, they can empathize with the situation. They know what is going on, so they tend to be more generous. I mean, it may not be absolutely bigger than what you could get from richer groups, but it is a huge population which wants to help and currently is unable to help.
So
So,
basically,
yeah,
in essence, if I can boil it down, is you can have, like, for example, 100 people giving like 10,
yeah,
25 cents, $5,
yeah,
$1, and that will accumulate to the 25 or 100 or $500. And so you're not dependent upon one big individual, like a lot of, in essence, charitable organizations are dependent
yes,
on one big donor. You have
yes,
spread it to enough to where you have a large base that you kind of can cover yourself in a sense.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And this even goes further because right now we are talking about the bigger organizations like Kiva and Milab. But let's say there is somebody between you who's doing good work, they will
Mm-hmm.
not be able to strike a deal with PayPal which waives the fees. But
Yes.
if we enable them to use cryptocurrency, then that's it, the fees problem is gone. And that's what we're trying to establish. We're trying to establish a system where you don't lose money to a payment processor and you give it to whoever's actually going to use the money.
So basically, in essence, where with Kiva, they say that the fees eat up to $3, maybe $5 of that $25. With Dogecoin, you're in essence are giving like $24.99 to a person, and that
Yeah.
$4.99 is a huge difference. That's a difference between having the greatest feed for the goats to an okay set of feed.
Yeah, that could very well be the difference. And that's a huge difference when you think about the number of people who are in this system.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So yeah, that's basically what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it easier. At the first phase, we still want to donate fiat currency to them. We want to convert the dough to dollars, but we
Mm-hmm.
also want to make a deal with them where they say, okay, we're willing to try cryptocurrencies the next time around.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of stuff could work a lot better because I think the profile of cryptocurrencies is going up. I mean, we just had the Africa to Moon campaign where we donated cryptocurrency directly.
Yes. So there is you might say, goodwill built in within Dogecoin, the Dogecoin community of being charitable, of doing either small or
Yeah.
big or great acts to where people are going to look at that and look at our history and say, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. I'm not going to be
Yeah.
so hesitant. With
Yep. Yep.
Bitcoin, there's so much baggage associated with it. I don't think you would, with a big microlending
Yeah.
Bitcoin project, be so successful.
I think we should just stop, comparing ourselves with them. It doesn't serve any purpose beyond the point.
No.
I came to Dogecoin because it was fun. I
Hmm.
stayed because people are nice and charitable. So
Yes.
these are people who are just, I mean, it's absolutely absurd to think of an online community which is nice. And Dogecoin is bucking the trend there. We have a bunch of people who just love being nice. That's why I love the community so much.
It is bucking the trend, and it is becoming a place where it's acceptable to be kind to another
Yeah.
individual online. And not only that, but demonstrate it through actions. It's one thing to do words and share memes and things of that nature, but you can, through action, through either sending, funds through Dogecoin or purchasing something and someone finds a gift on their door, you know,
Yeah.
those those things matter. It has an impact on it, either on an individual or group life.
Yep, yep. And people are even taking this into real life. I have a friend who just
Hmm.
for Valentine's Day he gave his girlfriend a little puppy which looks like the Shiba Inu from our cryptocurrency. And it is nice. People are doing fun things.
It is nice. It's do fun things. But I also want to talk. You do more than just microlending. I mean,
Uh-huh.
this proposal you went through and you pretty much won like the top prize in this
Yeah.
project. And you met a lot of people in Germany, and you've
Yep.
connected, and you're going forward with this. But you also have done other things, like you did Doge for Kashmir. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. That was
Let's
us.
let's talk about that. Let's talk about fundraising
Mm-hmm.
in a global sense and using cryptocurrencies. Had you ever fundraised for a charity prior to this, like the traditional method?
Uh, Before Dogecoin, I've done a little bit of work, but that's been to a very specific non-profit group which I was a part of. So I wouldn't say I've done it for a public cause as such.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only
Okay.
within Dogecoin that I've done it for these causes.
Okay. Have you had anyone else assisting you in the project that has that comparison where they can look to what was once before to what is now?
I think we could compare it just to the Doge for Kashmir case itself, because although I was contributing all the Doge donations, there were other people who were just collecting it from friends and doing it at the same time.
Okay. So
And
how
yeah,
did you
go
think that
on.
Dogecoin would be able to assist? I mean, you put up the post, you explained to what's going on, but what
Yeah,
made you
yeah.
think that yes, my community can do this? They're good enough people to do this.
I think because of our history. Because by the time I was making this post, I think Dogecoin had something like $500,000 raised for charity,
Okay.
and the amount I was hoping to raise was 1% of that, or not, sorry, not even 1.1% of that. So I thought, it's a good idea to ask them because this is not the kind of charitable run which communities do year upon year. This is something there was an actual disaster happening, and we had a chance to help. And given the community's past, I thought, okay, let's just try it out. Let's put a post and see if they're willing to help out. And turns out people were willing to help.
Mhm. Now let's talk about the conversion of Dogecoin, and obviously you must have had to convert it into to monetary value. Was that very
Yeah.
difficult to do in India? Did you have some issues, or did you have to do a little switch arounds?
Luckily, the person who bought the coin agreed to do it, so they did the conversion and they sent us fiat currency directly.
Oh,
So we did
okay.
not have a problem there. So, but it was in essence a problem because we lost money in the transaction because somebody is sending us fiat currency from another country, and there are obvious losses there. So it would
Okay.
have been much better if we could have locally converted it, but I don't think we had the capacity at that point. And that's one of the things I'm trying to fix, but that's a broader goal.
Okay, so you want to have, like, say, for example, like a local Dogecoin where people can peer to peer,
Yeah,
meet
exactly.
up
Yeah.
and sell Dogecoin or purchase Dogecoin. Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to start plugging the things I'm doing, but I am working on some of these platforms for at an Indian level right now.
Okay, well, you have ideas and notions, and I guess maybe basically you're just making people aware that you're doing these things, and when it pops up, it's just in their mind, and they go, okay, this is what
Yeah.
he was talking about. Okay.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, and then let's talk, a little bit about Dogecoin PR. You're part of that team
Mhm.
that is attempting to market Dogecoin either within the community but in the broader sense. Uh,
Yeah.
what do you see as, I know we had in the NASCAR, and we tried attempted to do it again, and maybe there might be another
Mhm.
run. We'll see. We did the
Yeah.
Africa to the moon. But what do you see as a way beyond just us being kind, being a strong community to try to connect to a
Mhm.
mass appeal?
Hmm. I might have a slightly marginally controversial viewpoint here. I think rather than mass appeal, we should go for mass acceptance. And the
Okay.
difference I'm trying to make here is saying, instead of making Dogecoin cool, make it
Mm-hmm.
elementary. Make it something so obvious that people use it, as opposed to something so cool that people want to use it. And I think this goes back into how we should establish a market system where people use Dogecoin for things. I think with Good Shiba, where he keeps making these posts, bringing all the vendors and together, that's very important. We need to make people see that you can use Dogecoin, and that is the single best thing we could do. Raising cash for charity is obviously good. Sponsoring NASCAR is obviously viewable and visible. But we need something which makes it more usable. We need something which shows that Dogecoin is a currency and not just a commodity.
Okay, so I see the good, the shy posts, the good shy posts, and the shy
Yeah.
Saturdays. You
Yeah.
would like to see more of a merchant adoption in a sense? Like, what is the type of items you think would kind of make people realize, haha, I can use this?
Mm, Uh, I think if we could get a very big retailer to accept it, that would be one of our biggest victories. For
Okay.
example, you have I think Newegg which accepts Bitcoin,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. It's very good for us that we have GoCoin supporting us, and it looks like PayPal might also eventually accept Dogecoin. All these are very good signs, and
Mm-hmm.
I think along these lines we should have a few online retailers because it ties into what Dogecoin really is. It is a digital currency, and when you're buying digital goods or products from a digital store, you should be able to use a digital currency.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what do you foresee yourself in a broader sense if you were to look from a year from now? Where would you think Dogecoin could possibly be? Because we're about to go into I guess you can say, the last halving of Dogecoin,
Right.
which would, I think,
Yeah.
puts us at the cap basically, and then from there it's just set how many Dogecoins are going to be created.
Yeah,
Where
just
do
a
you
small percentage of that. Yeah.
Yeah, small percentage. So where do you see foreseeably in a year right now?
Hmm. There are a lot of people trying to do a lot of things, so taking everything into account and having a really optimistic outlook, I'd say
Mm-hmm.
we'd see Dogecoin being used as one of the default currencies for spending online. And I
Okay.
would say that we would see a lot more charitable initiatives using Dogecoin as a means of raising funding.
Oh,
So
okay.
these are my two, I would say, ideal goals 1 year from now. These are not very big. These are completely achievable, and I think it's possible. So that's why I'm saying this is what we should expect in February 2016.
Okay. Now, with your micro lending project the proposal and
Yeah.
what you're doing, have you raised the full 5,000? Are you still raising?
Oh, no, no, we haven't. We haven't. We're still raising. We hit something like 10%, and
Okay.
then after the price fall, it's gone down to I think about 5%. So we're still way short of it. We have some plans of, maybe printing some products which we could sell and raise money, but we're not sure about it yet.
Okay. So at the moment you're
And we put it on hold for now because we want to have a conversation with a few people before we go further. I mentioned the Grameen Creative Lab, and
I
we've already got in touch with them. We want to do that before we continue the fundraising.
Okay. I also remember that at the time that you had received the acceptance and you were in Berlin, you were also looking into the
Mhm.
Bill Gates Foundation, and he has just recently made some
Yeah.
comments about, he specifically talked about Bitcoin, but digital monies and its purpose in life and how it could be used. And he was really emphasizing on the
Mhm.
charitable notion and the financial wherewithal, but he also cautioned about the whole ups and downs, how it's not
Yeah.
feasible. You
The
can't
one.
expect a third world country to ride through the ups and downs.
Yeah,
Have you
yeah,
ever
yeah.
did continue to reach out to them or?
We didn't reach out to them mostly because the Bill Melinda Gates Foundation released, I don't remember if it was a circular, they just mentioned it somewhere online. They said they are not looking into cryptocurrencies, at least as far as the foundation's goal are concerned.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we're not too keen about it, but both the Dogecoin Foundation and I did submit proposals for the Gates Grand Challenges explorations.
Okay.
And we're expecting to see what.
Is that a completely separate thing from the foundation?
Not entirely separate, but it's like a separate subsection, and they're at least open to looking at these things. So we had submitted two proposals. I think we'll find out in a few weeks what happened to that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's something to look forward to. Uh,
Yeah.
have you gotten any type of response, like of the different levels that you've made progress to, or is it just like a date that they tell everybody everything?
It just a day. This is a big something like a competition which they have. It was also publicized on the subreddit. I think about 4 months, 3 months back.
Uh-huh.
It's this one big competition like event which they have. So everything will come out on one day. And we just thought, let's suggest these things which are based on cryptocurrency. So there are at least two proposals to my knowledge which have been submitted. There might be more from the community, and we're waiting to see what happens. Beyond that, we're not hoping for too much with them because they mentioned some time back they don't want to use cryptocurrency, at least for the foundation's specific projects.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they have their reasons for that, stemming mostly from the volatility of the currency itself.
Okay. Okay. Now, when you are interacting on, the Reddit forums and you're coming from India and you have a completely different perspective than basically, the first world perspective, which is very dominant in
Yeah.
the cryptocurrency space, and I wish it wasn't
Yeah.
as dominant. Do you see as a way to where we can get to what Satoshi Nakamoto was envisioning, where it's more of a global thing? Is it a
Mhm.
translation? Is it, targeting specific, groups and having them be advocates for this? Do you foresee anything? Because it's a bit of concern for me personally.
Um, as far as what Nakamoto wanted, I would say it's still completely possible, but we are looking at something like a 5, 10 year timeline for that happening.
Okay.
Because, first of all, cryptocurrencies have to be accepted widely. And once that
Hmm.
is done, we can think about a global space where all of us are operating as equals or at least
Hmm.
peers.
Okay.
And it's definitely a possibility. I'm not denying it, but it's going to take time, and a lot of conditions need to be met before that can happen.
Okay. What conditions do you feel besides being the acceptance?
After it's accepted, there's still going to be like, if there is somebody in the US and let's say you have a business or service,
Hmm.
and for me to interact with them as a businessman is easy.
Hmm.
But if I come as a normal person and let's say I'm just interacting with somebody from the community, there are the inevitable jokes along the lines of, "Oh, India is a call center, haha, please do the needful." It's the same repeated jokes over and over again. And
Hmm.
these jokes are an underlying sign of what the psyche has built up in terms of stereotypes.
Yes.
And for those to break, it's going to take a lot of time. And that's what I mean when I say a condition has to be met. Essentially, people need to be a bit more aware of what is there around the world. And I think it's definitely going to happen because if you look at 50 years in the back, people never spoke to people outside the country apart from their personal connections.
Hmm.
Now you can just go online and talk to a completely random person online.
Yes, you can,
So
and you also don't know personally where that person is from. So you can
yeah,
have
absolutely.
go ahead.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Well, you can have all sorts of kind of conversations, and you're unaware. So those stereotypes that you may have held kind of evaporate. They don't come to the surface necessarily unless something
Yeah,
brings it up.
yeah, yeah. What cryptocurrencies could establish would be something like the icing on the cake of what the internet has already established. It's
Hmm.
broken down a lot of the barriers. And if you could also at least take a part of the financial barrier away, we're going to have a huge development.
Okay. Now I have a question to ask of you because
Yeah.
I'm doing something on my podcast when I'm talking about remittance.
Uh-huh.
I do believe remittance in the issue of remittance because personally I've lived in areas where I lived in Las Vegas for 10 years. It is a very
Mhm.
high immigration population. So you have a lot of
Right.
people coming over, working, and they're sending money back. I've lived in California
Right.
most of my life, and they do the same thing for primarily Mexico, but El Salvador and countries of that nation. And
Yep.
so
Yep.
they have to pay these high fees, and I have seen this,
Yeah.
and I've seen the scams and stuff that has happened in that case, and I
Yeah.
understand the need for that. But I have personally have this problem with all these companies coming in, and they're primarily targeting Africa. Uh,
Uh-huh.
is this another form of colonialism? If this is an
Okay.
economic form of colonialism, because there's so
Yeah.
much that has had changed, the internet technology. A lot of these countries have become self
Hmm.
independent. They might not be economically stable, but they're independent. They're not so dependent upon their previous colonial individuals. I just wanted,
Right.
as an outsider, as an individual that comes from a country that once was a former colony, that
Yeah.
has dealt with that issues internally, has become
Mhm.
India is becoming a superpower in the southeast
Yeah.
region.
Yeah.
What your perception is on this issue?
Uh, just talking about remittances, that's actually an area which I plan to focus on in one of my projects because
Mm-hmm.
India is one of the largest receiver of remittances from around the world, and quite a
Yes.
large percentage of it comes from the Arab area because we have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of migrant workers who go there and then send money home.
Mm-hmm.
And you always have these services like MoneyGram and Western Union who charge you huge fees when you want to send the money
Yes.
back.
Yes.
And this is one part of it where you're looking at people who want to send money back to their families. You can also look at the development perspective, where when you want to give the development funds, a large of it again goes away to these transfer people, which is just, it blows my mind that we are spending billions just to transfer money.
Yes.
And remittances are an industry which should ideally be completely disrupted by cryptocurrency
Mm-hmm.
because we are just getting rid of every single barrier there is. Like from now
Yes.
on, you don't need to have one company sitting in, let's say, Dubai and one
Mm-hmm.
other company in India, both of them making 10% when you send money. All you need to do is one computer in Dubai and one computer in India, and it's done. You just transfer the money. It's over.
Yes, and it is over. Plus, a number of countries, particularly in Africa, don't have the same banking infrastructure that a number of nations
Yeah.
have. And my only concern is that when these companies come in these space, are we just playing a game of musical chairs? They might not charge 10%, but maybe
Hmm.
they charge 2% or 3%, and they're the only
Yeah.
player in town. And so
Hmm.
they, in
Yeah.
essence, as cryptocurrency becomes more of an adoptive format, they can control a good chunk of a financial system. I mean, Wells Fargo and
Yeah.
MoneyGram, in essence, does control a good portion of a number of different countries' financial systems, and they're not banks
Yep.
because they
Yeah.
transfer these funds, and so they have a say on some things and certain things that are occurring. And if you want to do some kind of
Yeah.
reform as a number of these countries, it's not going to happen because of the power they have.
Yeah. You're giving the example of private groups like Wells Fargo. Look at public groups like the World Bank and the International
Yes.
Monetary Fund. Whenever they give money to developing countries, it's also with a lot of conditions. You're
Yes.
expected to buy stuff from first world countries, which completely changes the meaning of development aid. Because you're not just
Hmm.
giving aid, you're making it easier for your corporations to go do business in those countries.
Yes. Yeah, they're
It's a
becoming
very,
the
very sad situation.
it's a very sad situation. It's becoming a new form of banana republic in a sense so that you have to buy all these goods that
Yeah.
some of these goods are necessary. I can see the medical sense and the development of that and certain other products,
Yeah.
but it also prevents that country from developing their own economic system, so they become dependent on a different means. And it's
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
saddening. And I just wanted your thoughts on this. If I was just overthinking this and just having my own personal bias of whether or not this was another game of musical chairs, but I do believe remittances is necessary, and I want it to be disruptive because I know the amounts that are being sent and the amounts that are being taken from
Yeah.
people. It's just preying on the poor, really.
It definitely is. You're making money because the poor can't afford to have a simpler transmission system.
Yeah, it is the
And
same.
I probably share the same personal bias with you. And
Hmm.
I also think that the current remittance system is ripe for being disrupted. And although I hate the word disrupt, I think this is literally one of the places where that word is applicable.
Hmm. Well, I want it to be disrupted, but I also want when these companies come in here is I want them also to do other things than just remittance. I mean, there's countries that need,
Mhm.
clean water. They need,
Yeah.
true infrastructure. So if you're going to go into this country and you want to disrupt their financial system, then please build an infrastructure
Mhm.
for them for these people to be able to make a living on their own instead of just transferring money from one nation to another.
Yeah.
It would be
Yeah.
nice
Yeah.
if there
Yeah.
was some type of plan. It's something different than from the existing corporations because if we're truly
Yeah.
going to be part of this system where we are not going to be, in essence, the younger generation, not going to be like our parents, then we need to act like not like the baby boomers. We need to do things differently. And
Yeah.
there's some things that, we are doing things differently. We're being more socially conscious with where we're spending our money, what products we're purchasing and
Uh-huh.
buying because of either they're being, like Apple. Like, I'm not going to buy another Apple product because they use slave labor. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I do have an iPhone and I do have an iPod, but that's it. I'm
Yeah.
done. And how clothing is made and things of that nature. And I know I can't control everything, but what I can control, I'm going to do. And it's just I would
Yeah.
like to see these companies that I do believe have some kind of social conscience actually act on the social conscience instead of saying it.
Yeah, I'm guessing it will happen because right now it's a global phenomenon where almost all these companies, whether it's Apple or Samsung or Motorola, all of them
Hmm.
come out of the same factory. I mean, we think they're all different, but it's all coming out of, some
No,
Foxconn
I
located
know
somewhere
they
in
all
China.
come out of the same factory, and I'm looking at like the black phones and people developing phones here,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
America on their own, the type of hodgepodge type of system. And that might not be the case
Hmm.
for my next phone where that's not going to be possible, but I just like to be able to know that the products I'm getting from someone actually was paid their appropriate wage. They weren't abused,
Yeah.
they weren't enslaved. I understand that when someone gets paid $5 an hour in another country, it's not the same as in my country. That $5 might be the
Yeah.
equivalent of $25 an hour here.
Yeah.
I don't have that bias, but it's just very strange to me.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. Yeah.
What is considered acceptable and what is not considered acceptable. I don't know.
Yeah. Um, these things will happen. I guess they'd happen naturally anyway, but we need people to be talking about them. And the more people talk, the higher there is a chance of things actually changing.
That's true. I mean, people are talking about it. They're writing about it. They're doing posts about it.
Yeah.
I just like to see more economic dollars going away from that because that's where real change. When look at Jon Stewart, which is very a trivial thing, but he announced that he
Hmm.
was retiring, and the company that he
Yeah.
works for stock plummeted by 20%. And that's like
I don't know that. Okay.
that's silly. It's like, why couldn't that happen to Apple, which made the biggest money haul of any company out there in the world? Why couldn't they, when it came out with the Foxconn stuff, their stock
Yeah.
dropped like 50%?
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know. Maybe it's just my American hang up. I don't know.
It's okay. It's better that you have the hang up rather than do not care at all.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Are there any other, you know, projects or anything that you want to speak about or anything you observe in the community you want to share with everyone?
Observe the community. I
Mm-hmm.
guess we need to have a few more concrete ventures where people are working together. I just like to see a lot more Dogecoin entrepreneurs or even crypto entrepreneurs in general, because I think that's a good area which should happen.
Okay.
Because I'd like to see a lot more things happening from within the community rather than us saying, "Hey guys, GoCoin is supporting us. Like, let's support GoCoin." I mean, that's cool, yeah, but look at how useful it was that Molan started off Dope Tip bot, and now it's become a proper business. And it looks like people are also doing the same thing with text Doge right now. So these are things which are very important. These are things which help build the community and help build the currency. And I'd like to see more of this happen. That's about it.
Okay. And now, is there any place or any projects you want to plug, or if people can get in touch with you, or they just can find you on the subreddits and forums and just, say hey?
Yeah, I feel really bad plugging my projects because it feels a little weird and slimy to do it.
Okay.
But okay, I mean, I'd always love to have more help for people who want to write news articles for Dogecoin PR, and they've also offered help the foundation. The foundation might be working with us. So we just want more people who want to write, and it's always good to have writers around the clock. We have 2 or 3 people right now, and it's good. It's always good to have more.
Okay. Well, so
So they
there's
can
a
just they can drop by Dogecoin underscore PR. That's the subreddit.
Okay, so you heard it from the man himself. If you are a writer or you have a desire to share your knowledge about Dogecoin, they're looking for people to talk about it. So you want to get on the Twitter, you want to get on your WordPress, you've been thinking about doing a blog. They need writers. They need people to talk about this and talk.
Yay!
Yeah?
Yeah.
They
I've
need
also got my own projects, but I'll talk about them at some later point. They're not ready for sharing publicly yet. We want to have a very simple Dogecoin buying system. We want to set up an exchange in India. We want to set up a simple payment processor. But we need to get past all the regulatory hurdles before that.
Okay. Well, when you feel that you guys are ready, then you should we should communicate and we can talk about that and make people aware
Yeah.
because you could potentially have, either people shouting out loud that this is existing or, being
Yeah.
investors and saying, hey, here's some Doge or here's some capital. I think your project's great.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be great. Yeah.
All right. Well, I can thank you very much for coming on. I
Yeah. Thank you for
appreciate
having me.
appreciate you speaking with me and basically, I guess, being my counselor on some of these issues here. I
No, I
appreciate
think
that.
you. I think you're pretty up to date with information. In fact, you probably have more info than I do about a lot of these things.
Oh, well, thank you. I try my best. I try not to be misinform people. I try to speak
Uh-huh.
what I know and that's it. I don't elaborate too much unless I basically say, this is my rant. I have no idea, but I'm emotional about it. And so
Yeah.
that way people know, this is not truthful information. They just know it's just a straight up opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate you speaking with me, and I hope you have a great morning or great day, I should say.
Yeah, and great day to you too. I mean, it's late evening for you, but have a good day and to the moon. Yay.
To the moon, yes. Thank you. And I'm disconnecting now. Okay.
Okay. Yay.